Johannes from AWS. I am going to give you a presentation which is basically covering the most common questions that you have for me. So now you are still very welcome to come and reach out to me during this conference, but a lot of the questions that I oftentimes get are covered in the following presentation. Some of it's very much peering related, some of it's a little bit more general. I would like to start by just talking a little bit about semantics or the lingo that we use. So AWS is distributing a lot of different type of infrastructure around the world. So to serve our cloud services and to serve the various types of content that we do, these are the different type of infrastructure tools that we have in our toolbox. What we have is so-called regions. An AWS region is where all of our services reside. So this is cloud compute, cloud storage, machine learning, databases, whichever service you could possibly run in the cloud, those are available in our regions. And a region consists of at least 3 availability zones, which I will explain shortly, which is basically 3 football fields of data centers. So this is like a big presence when we have an AWS region. A region consists of availability zones. For example, in Cape Town, where we have a region, that's 3 availability zones. In Ashburn, Virginia, I think we're up to 7 or 8 availability zones now, but that's also a very big one. So as each region consists of 3 availability zones, that's because we have everything redundant. So even if one availability zone in one region is down, the region as a whole is up. So it's 3 times redundancy for every region. Then we have local zones. Local zones are sometimes referred to as mini regions, which is not really correct, but it is a small zone where we are able to run cloud compute on the edge. So a good example of a local zone is the edge pop that we have here in Lagos, which is also running a local zone. So this means that when you want to run cloud compute, or for example, if you want to game online, if your kids want to shoot their friends online, then they can now shoot each other in Lagos. They don't have to go all the way to Europe to do it, if you see what I mean from a latency perspective. So short latency, very important for cloud compute. This is why we have local zones. Points of presence, those are traditional edge pops. Again, all of our local zones are co-located with our points of presence. So we have a pop here in Lagos. We have 6 pops in total across Africa now. But those are connected to our, all connected to our backbone and can serve CDN and quite often cloud compute. Then we have something called wavelength zones, which are small zones which are for telcos to partner with Amazon and sell cloud compute services. I won't go into any depth. We are doing some pilots of wavelengths in some countries in Africa, not yet in Nigeria. We have direct connect locations. Direct connect is the name of Amazon's so-called cloud on-ramp solution. You will see that Google and Microsoft, they have similar types of products. So this is for enterprise customers who want to have an SLA on their connectivity to Amazon, somebody who wants network isolation and not have the traffic travel over the internet. And if you are an enterprise serving ISP in Nigeria, I'd recommend that you have a look at this. This is a way for you to possibly make a buck out of Amazon's presence in Nigeria. I know that Nigerian enterprises are asking for direct connect, and they are buying it from our existing partners, and maybe you should become one. Then we have outposts, which are not connected to our backbone, but which are small zones which are catered for people who want to run the AWS cloud on premises. Typical customer would be ExxonMobil or some other large international customers who run everything in general on the AWS cloud, and then they want to do something in a country like, I don't know, Tanzania or Nigeria or whatever, but they are far away from all the infrastructure, then they can run outpost. Last but not least, we are doing embedded caches now, which is along the same lines, the same idea as what you are seeing from Netflix and Meta and Google and so on and so forth. As of now, our embedded caches are very well suited to serve Amazon Prime Video and a number of other services. It's actually not a very good tool yet for Africa. I'm sure I'm going to get a ton of questions about it, but we do deploy caches also now. Just to give you we have now across the world 34 regions, I think. Many of them in Europe and the US, also quite a few in Asia. We have one region in Africa. It's always funny when Americans put a dot on the map, but I guess this is Africa in general. So the region that we have in Africa is in Cape Town, which was also the location where we invented cloud compute. So that's a fun fact for the African market. As I mentioned, local zone, we have that in many places. Many of them in the US, catering for the new crazy AI boom that we all hear about. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. Already live here in Lagos, so you guys were first. We have also announced that we're going to build local zones in Johannesburg and in Nairobi. And then this is an image showing where we have the different types of infrastructure. It becomes very cluttered, as you can see in Europe, and also in the US East Coast. And then you can see where we have presence in Africa. I do see that one of the backbone links we have 3 backbone links from Rack Center to Europe. The drawing is kind of bad. So all of our edge POPs are connected through a backbone that looks kind of like this. And you can also see that the Nigeria POP is connected both down to Cape Town and up to Europe on, the usual suspects of cables, of which there should be more. Ref the question and discussion between Mark and Ben earlier today. Question number 1. AI is all the hype. How will this affect all the traffic on the internet and peering? I don't know if everybody was wondering about this, but we do get quite a few questions about it. I am certainly not an AI expert, but I do hear a lot of talk about AI and how this is going to change everything, which we can discuss over a beer tonight. But how is it going to affect peering? That we can discuss now. So in 2020, Dave Brown went out and said, now we're building these data centers custom built to take care of AI workloads. And it's not very clear on the slide, but then by that time, internally in the data center, it was all on 400 gig networking devices, which sounds like a lot. And then 1 year later, the whole networking thing was on 800 gig. Then it was 1.6 T. And then it was double that again. So if you look at the bandwidth that we see inside these data centers, and we can also talk about flops and NVIDIA and chips and all these things that I know nothing about, but at least from a networking perspective, these draw a lot of power, and they draw a lot of very, 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 very big network cards for the internal traffic within. So when you look at these numbers like, ooh la la, what is going to happen on all the traffic on the internet? This is the new trend. Amazon, Microsoft, Google are now moving into the power business. We have all made announcements in the last few months and weeks that we are both buying nuclear power stations, and we are now going to start to build nuclear power stations. So, yeah, AI is drawing a lot of high-density rack, needs a lot of power. So this is an interesting trend. This is just an image of our latest kind of architectural design, of which I understand approximately as much as you do. But there are a lot of servers, lot of internal bandwidth, and it's a or making it in total like an 8T fabric, as we call. So how will this change interconnect? As far as I can see, not at all. All the same. the amount of traffic that we see going out of these data centers and being shipped over the internet to our various peers. The biggest one we have in America is producing like a fifth of the traffic which we are shipping on a daily basis out of our POP in Rack Center. So interestingly, a lot of heavy workloads, a lot of internal bandwidth, a lot of power, a lot of stuff, but for actually traffic facing, and for the companies that are using this, of course, they need to access that data, and it will have to travel also over the internet. But that part of the business, the actual end product coming out, is about as bandwidth intensive as many other enterprise services. So from an interconnect viewpoint, AI is a big deal. It's high value traffic, but it's not generating a lot of overall bandwidth. Question number 2. Can we set up a 10 gig PNI in Johannesburg, please? No, we can't. Amazon is no longer deploying 10 gig PNIs. It's now all 100 gigs. If you're now sitting in the audience and you have a 10 gig PNI here in Rack Center, don't worry, I'm not going to de-pair you tomorrow. It's all good. We are also pragmatists and we care about our customers. But if you would like to move to PNIs now, from here onwards, we would like to have 100 gig ports. So we have a new hardware fabric. Rack Center, our Rack Center POP was actually one of the first POPs in the world on this new fabric, which is basically a 400 gig fabric. So if we put in a 10 gig port, we're kind of wasting away 390 gigs. So, and we also want to do 2. So 2 times 10, that's a loss of 700, and yeah, you know, it's a loss. It's not really something that we want to do. So from now on, 100 gig ports 2, please. Otherwise, of course, we are quite happy to pair with you still over IXPM, which is an excellent IX that we are connected to here in Lagos. So maybe in 6 to 12 months, we will start to twist your arm ever so gently in order to move you over to hundreds. Please reach out to me as soon as you would like to move. And then after a while, I will twist your arm a little bit harder and say, listen, you got to move to hundreds, or else we will move you to IXPM, or we will de-pair you and you will reach it via your upstream. So of course, this is not something we want to do. I think it's much better to have bilateral pairing. I expect that we will find a solution. But it is now 100 gig ports, or 400s if you have them. But I don't think that there are a lot of networks here which do 400s yet. I'm not a very good buddy of this. It doesn't want to stop there. So sorry, Mohammed. I'm going to have a little bit of a go at some of the stuff that you said earlier today. All for the healthy discussion, of course. Hi, Amazon. Can you join our IXP? It's free, it's distributed, it's growing, it's very cool. And we think that you should all connect to this new IXP. Do you want to do it? I hope nobody in the audience feels that I'm talking to them, because I'm not really. I'm talking to a number of large European IXs mainly, but still. For those of you who were at Africa Pairing Forum this week, there was a panel also on this topic. It's getting a lot of attention. As you might have heard, another big hyperscaler is moving away from the route servers, and a lot of networks are concerned that big hyperscalers are moving away from IXs. We are not, but I would like to give you a couple of thoughts from Amazon's viewpoint on IXs. So the value, or what is an IX? It's a switch, which is kind of a technical part of it, and then there's a community, which is us, the ones we see in our room right now. And for some people, they think mainly of this as a switch. Amazon thinks of this mainly as a community. So the value add of an IX is maybe as much to educate, create an arena, create a community, ensure that we all grow together in terms of competence. And I would go as far as argue that this actually has a bigger value than the technicality of where the pairing land where we meet. Amazon will not disconnect from IXs. We will continue to be connected probably to one IX in every metro where we have a POP. But we don't need to be connected to as many IXs as possible. And just to be awfully blunt with you, the internet pairing is not really happening over IXs in the big scheme of things for players such as Amazon. So we always connect to IXs to ensure that we can serve the long tail of networks. So we, for example, here in Lagos, we are connected to a lot of good networks, and we are happy to pair with you over IXPN, and it works super well. But for the big amounts of traffic with the MTNs and Airtels and Glo and you know the guys who are serving the large ISPs in whichever country, that is all over PNIs, 100 gig ports. And that is very much completely dwarfing the traffic which is going over the IX. So in many metros, I don't think Lagos is the best example, but in many metros, if the IX went down, it would hardly show up as a blip on our traffic graph. So in some African metros, like in Johannesburg and also in Lagos, it would make a difference because there are still a relatively high share of networks which are present over the IX. But over time, we don't think that an IX, a value of an IX is not measured, in our opinion, on how many terabits of traffic it ships. Because if we're shipping terabits over an IX, we've done something wrong. Those networks should be on the PNI. On the PNI, we can follow up operationally exactly with that pair. We have much better control on what's going on. We know exactly how much the headroom is. A lot of our third-party customers will come in and say, hey, we want to ship another 1T into Nigeria, and then if I don't even know how much headroom, I know how much headroom I have towards the IX, but on an IX, I don't know how much headroom the other player have at their end, which brings uncertainty for me, so I need to set it to 0. Hence, the value for us to a large degree is the community and the educational things which are added. So don't get me wrong, IXs are good, but we are not trying to increase the number of IXs that we are connected to. We are actually reducing the number worldwide, but we will still be connected probably to about 1 IX per metro. Sorry, there are a lot of words on this slide, and I have nicked it from a colleague of mine, so I think I have said what I wanted to say. There's one slide on do's and don'ts. So, thankfully here, I am not shooting at any of you in the audience, as far as I know, but in some IXs that we see in some markets, the new trend is to do remote pairing. So, for example, you can connect to AM6 from Hungary. AM6 is the exchange in Amsterdam. You can connect to DGX Frankfurt from Stockholm and all kinds of things. And this might be a good service for small networks and for enterprises, but from a hyperscaler such as ourselves, this is complete rubbish because it just leads to unintended consequences and big tromboning on traffic on the internet. And then it also adds to the operational costs. So I think that there are good corner cases for remote pairing. For example, a good example would be here in Lagos, where I guess you could argue that networks in Kano or Abuja can connect to IXPN because there is a network internally in the country. That represents a value because, to be frank, Abuja is not an internet hub and there are not many networks present there. So that traffic would always have to come from Lagos anyway. So this is not completely this is not completely black and white. But for example, if somebody remote peers from Stockholm to Frankfurt, I would much rather connect to that network in Stockholm instead of see this remote pairing rubbish. So please don't do that. And also, I don't think that it's a value of a market is kind of given by how many IXs are present. There are already plenty of IXs in the market in Nigeria. In Nairobi, there are even more. At least from my angle, we don't need more as long as the one in the market is working well. Of course, it's always good to put Mohammed a little bit on his toes to make sure he always delivers a good product. So let's make sure that we do that. But there are also other ways to do that than just launch more IXs. So, to those of you who operate IXs, and also to those of you who are customers of IXs, which probably includes hopefully many here in the audience, let's make sure that we also focus a lot on the community and on education, competence, and the value add that this can represent. So for example, a reason why Amazon is sponsoring a pairing forum such as this is not because, as you can see, my booth out there is kind of pathetic. I don't do anything there. I don't have time to sit in the booth all the time. I'm not trying to sell anything. But I think it is a great value that these arenas exist so we can come together and listen to interesting presentations, if it's about Mark Tinka and the new on subsea and optical or whatever, or it's me ranting on about IXs. At least for us, this is a good arena where we can discuss these important topics and increase the competency. I should also mention, and this is a little bit of a kick to you, Mohammed, we need more ASNs in Nigeria. Look at Brazil. So we look at Brazil as a bit of a disaster. There are so many small, incompetent networks in Brazil that have a network, and then they want to connect to over the IX, and we want to pair with them, and then they exchange 50 megabits of traffic, and they send rude emails to our NOC about how things are not working, and they don't understand up and down on BGP, they don't understand why it's down, and at the end we just say, please go and buy transit, don't bother us anymore, we can't deal with this. So, this is a bit of a caricature I'm painting to you, but eyeball ISPs which have the competence and know what you're doing, you're delivering internet access, please come and pair with us over 2x100 or over IXPN. If you're an enterprise network that have a very small needs and you don't really have the internal competence to know what pairing is, please go to a good internet service provider and buy internet access or buy transit. And our operations is not bogged down with all these details. So it's not the more the merrier, but for sure, it's good to pair, and we always want to have a direct exchange if possible. I just want to say there is a little bit of a give and take also on the number. We don't measure success by having, like over the exchange in Brazil, I think we have 1,300 pairs or some idiotic number. It's a pain. AWS is also doing caching now. Can I have a cache, please? I will save on my transit. Not yet. So we no longer keep it a secret that we do caches. We have about 1,000 devices deployed now around the world, most of them in India and in the US, and quite a few also now in Europe. Our cache is the same idea as, for example, Google or Meta is doing. They have been doing this for longer than us. They're doing a really good job at it. We will get there also. For now, our cache is really, really good for live traffic and for distributing Amazon Prime, and also for software downloads for gaming and such like. The reason why I haven't been knocking on everybody's door to install a cache in Lagos or in Abuja or in Kano or in Port Harcourt or wherever is that the amount of cacheable traffic in a market such as Nigeria is still small. Amazon Prime, for good or for bad reasons, is still a very small player in the Nigerian market. We're working to improve that, but you have some really, really good local African content providers who are doing much better than us. And those streams cannot yet be served via our cache. So please feel free to come to talk to me about this. In about a year's time, I think we should also start to discuss how and when and where to deploy, hopefully. I will probably come to regret that I just said that, but you know, it is an excellent device to solve the fact that we are all building video distribution networks, and to distribute video, this is a great device, but we are not yet there where Amazon's device is suitable for all Nigerian ISPs. So this is the sort of questions we get from small ISPs, but sometimes we get it from bigger ISPs also, and sometimes the question is good, and sometimes it's not quite so good. We have peering with you in Lagos. Why are we still seeing traffic through our upstream? So now let's talk a little bit about what traffic we serve and how we route our traffic, and why you sometimes will see some traffic also coming via your upstream. Let me do like a tiny sort of tangent here. We launched in Lagos in January last year. The traffic that we ship out of our node in Lagos is already much, much higher than we were hoping for in our forecasts. Maybe because we're rubbish at forecasting, or maybe because, you know, you guys are doing well here. It's a little bit of both, I think. We have managed to move 90% of the traffic that we previously shipped mainly out of Europe to be served locally from our node here in Lagos. This is great. What is also really good is that from our POP in Lagos, we are able to see prefixes from Ghana, from Cote d'Ivoire, from Cameroon, from Burkina, and other markets where we don't have infrastructure yet. So as a West African hub, good job. Lagos is, you know, delivering the goods. There are tons of challenges that we could discuss, you know, about reliability of terrestrial routes and all kinds of things, but on the whole, this is going well. So most of the traffic we are shipping to you from our node here at Rec Center. But, so where is the traffic coming from? I mentioned we have a local zone here, meaning that it's possible for a customer who wants to buy cloud compute to go into the so-called Amazon console, and then they can buy, and then they can choose, I want to run my compute workloads in Lagos. But then the customer might also, I want to run my compute workloads in Cape Town because most of my customers are in South Africa. Or they might say, I want to run my workloads in Dublin because the electricity is 5% cheaper there. So we don't dictate where our customers host their sessions, their workloads. Sometimes it's in Lagos, but oftentimes it will be far away. For all the cloud services in Europe, Middle East, and Africa, I will get to these regions later, we will serve it over our backbone. So if something is hosted in Dublin, we will not hand it over to your transit or to our pairing session in Dublin or London. We will ship it over our backbone, and it will egress in Lagos. So you will still perceive it as locally received traffic. We will not put this on our on your backbone. However, we operate with what we call routing regions. So all of Europe, Middle East, and Africa is one routing region, meaning that all cloud services routes within this circle you will get when you pair with us in Lagos, or in any other of these metros for that matter. However, if a customer decides to host all of their stuff in Ashburn, Virginia, or in Sao Paulo, or in Singapore, we will not ship that over our backbone. You will receive it via your transit or over the pairing that we have in those markets. We could probably have a good discussion about why we don't announce everything everywhere and so on and so forth, and you might think this is because we're cheap bastards who don't want to, you know, ship that traffic. But this is actually not the real reason, because those costs are kind of not so bad, and we also have a pretty good backbone with a lot of headroom. The main reason is blast radius. We have seen that even the best networks in the world every once in a while get problems, and if we do, heaven forbid, have a situation where US West is down, then we don't want to affect all of AWS's regions all over the world. So, of course, there is an economic element to this, which is why, Korea is a separate routing region. At least we have managed to put all of Europe, Middle East, and Africa as one region. And I can tell you the amount of traffic that we shipped from outside of this routing region into Lagos, I think last time I checked it was 1.7%. So on the whole, you get all the cloud traffic locally. Then it's the CDN, or CloudFront. So Amazon CloudFront, which is our CDN node, which is co-located in our node in Rack Center, it is distributing, as I mentioned, Amazon Prime Video. It's shipping a lot of football from various providers, third-party providers. It's shipping some, Chinese social media traffic. It's shipping a lot of the gaming downloads and all that stuff. And I don't want to give you a whole spiel about CDN routing now, but I'll give you the small version of it. CDN routing, it's all local egress, so this traffic will not ride our backbone. So you will get the CDN content which is cached here in Lagos, which I said, which is more than 90% of the total. This is not straightforward BGP. For our CDN, we optimize for latency, which is the best proxy that we have for user experience. So if you try to traffic engineer the traffic here, we will just simply ignore it. We will route based on the DNS resolver. We make a map of which resolver you use, and we try to measure which resolver is the closest to you. And based on this, we will serve all of your network, all of the IP range from this DNS resolver. It's not such a big problem in Nigeria because most of the other ones are really, really far away, as much as 70 milliseconds. So we haven't had a lot of issues. But if you, for example, suddenly decide, I think we're going to use the same DNS resolver as Deutsche Telekom, that's not a great idea because suddenly all of your traffic will reach you from Frankfurt. But as long most ISPs here run their own DNS resolver and it is located here and it's quite easy to work out that it's the best one. So in that sense, it works quite well. But know that we optimize for latency, and the way we do it is by routing based on which resolver you use. If you do have any issues about this, reach out to me or find more details on our pairing DB entry. If you haven't already enabled ECS or EDMS Anycast, what was it called, in your network, have a discussion internally. I know that it's not, it is just to turn it on, but you should probably think about it quite carefully before you do it. But both to route Amazon traffic and also for the other CDNs, it will help you out. I think that's what I wanted to say. Joshua is pointing at me for opening up for questions. So, anything, as this was an FAQ, I guess I already answered all the questions, but there might possibly be some other ones. What a surprise. Ben has a question.
We email you peering. Do you have a portal? As a peer, can you see stats or traffic, or do you just talk to you for that kind of data? Thanks.
Ben is rightfully very proud of Meta's peering and CDN portal. I think he should be. It's good stuff. We use it also when we want to pair with them, if we ever were. We also have a pairing portal. If you go to our pairing DB entry, you can click on, what is it now? I don't remember, in Interconnect, AWS, anyway, the link is on our pairing DB entry. I do hope, by the way, that you all have a pairing DB entry. If you don't, we will not pair with you. I should have said that along the way. The good news about the pairing portal is that it's existing, and if you are already pairing with us, for example, in Lagos, you can set up sessions with us elsewhere. The bad news, and the reason why Ben wanted to put me on the spot, is that he probably also worked out that if you are not already pairing with us anywhere, the first set of sessions will still need to be approved by a human. So if you go to that one and say, and you don't pairing with us anywhere, and you want to pair only in Lagos and nowhere else, then you might as well send me an email, because I need to deal with it anyway. if you want to pair with us, you already pair with us, for example, here or somewhere else, and you want to pair over another 10 AXs, you can just go and click in the portal and add all those metros as you go along. So that is the status of the portal. It's not good enough. We have the same thing, by the way, also for our cache, but as that's not open up for you yet, because you can only access this once you have caches in place. So that's the status on the portal. One day we hope to be as good as you are, Meta, for the portal. Thanks very much for your attention. If you have further questions, I'm around for 2 days. Please ask.